This is a brief look at one of the most profound technologies introduced to the Malay people before the advent of digital technology. That is, the Arabic alphabet through the spread of Islam in the Malay region of Southeast Asia. This alphabet became modified to coalesce into a unified writing script for the Malay world, a script that came to be known as Jawi. It was used from the islands of Indonesia to the Malay Peninsula into southern Thailand, as well as on the island of Borneo and the southern Philippines. By utilizing this alphabet to create their own language, the Malay people were able to study scripture, record poetry and literature, create education systems, and disseminate information widely throughout the region, and eventually used it as a means to finally gain independence from colonial powers. However, with independence and being thrust into a post-war globalized world, these countries soon chose to relinquish their historic academic ties to this script and replaced it with a Malay script based on the Roman alphabet. Even though the use of Arabic-based Jawi script has declined tremendously, especially in the digital age, its cultural, religious, and historical significance can still be found. The oldest written forms of the Malay language used by the ethnic Malays of Southeast Asia date back to the 7th century AD. Early inscriptions found in parts of Indonesia show evidence of the Sanskrit alphabet used in this area to write Malay in different types of scripts. Although Sanskrit was used to transcribe Malay for many centuries, these scripts were never used practically in everyday life. Many kingdoms in the Malay archipelago gave up using these letters and transcribing their languages at all until traders brought Islam and the Arabic script to the region. Along with these traders, the Muslim religion, and with it the new technology of the Arabic alphabet, began to influence the culture and religion of the region when it arrived. The arrival of Islam, and with it the Arabic alphabet, began in the 11th century with the first arrivals of merchants from the Middle East. At this time, Malay was written using a lot of different scripts by various Malay kingdoms in different regions, primarily utilizing the Sanskrit alphabet. The 13th century saw the spread of Islam across the Malay Peninsula due to the increasing amounts of Muslim traders, simplicity of its message, and the conversion of the Malay sultans in the region to the religion. The institutionalization of Islam first occurred in the Malay archipelago with the formal conversion of a ruler of a state in northern Sumatra at this time. As Islam was introduced, it brought with it the Holy Quran as well as other liturgical texts, such as prayer books that were written in the Arabic script. To read and understand these texts, it was therefore essential that those in the educated and religious classes learn to read the Arabic language using the Arabic alphabet. The spread of the religion caused massive changes in the region, one of them being the change to the written word. Due to the dominance of Arabic in the Islamic texts, the Indian-based scripts were dispensed with, and a new system of writing Malay based on Arabic characters and words started to emerge. This saw a major change in the region's literacy. However, the Malay language included sounds not present in the Arabic alphabet that was being introduced, so the alphabet had to be modified to accommodate all of these other Malay phonemes. In the end, 6 new Arabic-based letters were developed and added to the 29-letter Arabic alphabet to create the Jawi alphabet. In the 14th century, the Jawi alphabet was finalized, which is evidenced by the Terengganu stone inscription dating back to this time. In the 1400s and early 1500s, the Jawi script was used primarily for sultans, trade communication, and diplomacy in peninsular Malaysia. However, we start to see that Jawi was being used for literacy amongst the general public as well, from the evidence of tombstones found across the region engraved using the script. The earliest examples of the Malay language written on paper in Jawi script were from 1521 and 1522, in letters by the Sultan of Ternate addressed to the King of Portugal. During this period, we see the development of Malay literature with the first Malay manuscript, also written using Jawi writing, dating back to 1590. However, there are undated Jawi texts that may have come from earlier in the 16th century. Once established in the region, Jawi then bridged the various Malay dialects in palaces, markets, and religious schools throughout the region and became the most common form of written communication. To contextualize the way in which the Arabic scripted Jawi Malay played a pivotal role in the literacy and educational development of the Malay people in Southeast Asia, the role of the Malacca Sultanate in the 15th and 16th centuries must be examined. During this time, Malacca was the center of Islam in the region. Its ruler converted to Islam early in the 15th century, and the spread of Islam in the Sultanate gathered momentum due to the influx of Indian and Arab traders, as well as Islamic teachers coming to this port town. It is during this time Jawi literacy started to grow widely, and education systems, particularly religious education, began to spread as well, using Jawi as the script of instruction. As Malacca grew and became a regional power, it became the major center for proselytizing Islam throughout the region. Soon another important kingdom, Java, also converted to Islam from Hindu Buddhism, and the Arabic-based script spread even further. In the 1500s, Jawi was used to write trade agreements, treaties, and other official documents, as well as being the means of studying Islam in the early intellectual Islamic centers in Southeast Asia. During this time, Jawi developed into the Malay intellectual script and became the dominant form of writing the Malay language and creating Malay literature. The literary tradition of Jawi and the Malay ethnic identity alongside it can be attributed to the success and reputation of Malacca as a Muslim trading port in the 14 and 1500s. As the first colonialists, the Portuguese, conquered the kingdom at the beginning of the 16th century, rather than stifle the spread of Islam in the Malay world, they actually caused it to rapidly spread throughout the islands of the region, which in turn was facilitated by the growing use of Jawi at this time. As the Portuguese took control of Malacca, the outlying Muslim states then strove to model themselves on the successes of Malacca in its heyday. As Europeans descended on the Malay people in the 16th and 17th centuries, they described Malay and the Jawi script as the Latin of Southeast Asian trading states. After the fall of Malacca to the Portuguese, immigration and dispersal triggered by the occupation caused people to spread Islam using the Jawi script and Malay language and customs to various centers in the Malay archipelago, peninsular Malaysia, and into southern Thailand. These centers were set in places like Johor, Riau, Patani, Kelantan, and Terengganu, amongst others. During the 17th and 18th centuries, these centers became the focal points for Malay education, philosophy, and Islamic culture. It was at this time that the Jawi script moved from a royal and diplomatic communication function to a script used by the general populace throughout the region as well, and came into its own as a unifying writing system in the Malay world. During the colonial period, Jawi script had to compete with new Roman scripts created by the European colonizers. The use of Jawi's main function as a means of literacy, and therefore education in the Malay world, became readily apparent with newspaper publications produced during the colonial times. These newspapers, written in Jawi, became tools for education as well as communication amongst the people in the region. They were used to discuss the role of Malays during colonialization and as tools to resist colonialism. The Malay education system is where the origins of Malay nationalism began, and the Jawi newspapers were used as the primary way for educating Malay youth. Due to the fact that many Malays were literate in Jawi script, these newspapers were crucial to resisting colonialism and Western domination. In the early 20th century, the Jawi script was formally adopted as official post in the government sector and implemented in public schools. Up until 1952, Malay schools, under colonial occupation, taught reading, composition, and writing in the Jawi script, as well as religious subjects. However, history, math, and health education were being taught using the Roman script Malay. Ironically, after the countries of the region gained independence in the second half of the 20th century, the prominence of Jawi in the education system began to fade. The Rumi, or Roman Malay script, introduced by the British, became the main method of instruction in schools and for governments, and it saw the Jawi script become utilized primarily for Islamic school subjects. Since the Jawi script has always been linked to Islam and to Malays, it is also today a symbol to identify Malay ethnicity and Malay culture. Jawi's use in education, however, has now been relegated primarily to the religious sector of the Muslim Southeast Asian countries. With the rise of national sentiments and the backlash against Western influence in countries across the region, Jawi may try to make a comeback into mainstream usage, especially through more conservative Islamic institutions around the region. However, the fact of the matter is that in an increasingly globalized world that is much anglicized, it is easier for students to learn and businesses to become comfortable with a Rumi Malay script. As Jawi was at the forefront of literacy and education throughout the region, its legacy is now becoming more and more ornamental. It will be interesting to see if Jawi's use can still be maintained in the various religious schools and institutions throughout the region in the coming generations.